Having a triggering conversation is like having that check engine light come on in your car. Now, if you're like most humans, what do we do when the check engine light in our car comes on? Chances are that we ignore it for a little while because, let's face it, we're human and procrastination is a thing. So because procrastination is a thing, we typically don't take that car in until there is something that is noticeably wrong. So we keep driving along the road, along our journey, the journey of life, and in the case of these triggering conversations, the first thing that usually malfunctions and breaks down is the functioning of that conscious part of our psyche. So you're cruising down the highway, right? And your car begins to break down, and suddenly it just stops in the middle of the highway. Now, what you didn't realize was that the person that was driving behind you was also not really paying attention to the road. Maybe they were distracted and thought they weren't really being present in the moment, or maybe they were texting, and before you know it, they have slammed into the back of your car and rear-ended you. So now you're angry and they're angry, so you get out of your respective cars and proceed to yell at each other, each placing blame on the other one. You weren't paying attention. Why did you just suddenly stop in the middle of the road? And there is blame and fingers being pointed at each other, each without looking at our own stuff. The two of you are proceeding to get into conflict right in the middle of oncoming traffic, having no awareness of the surrounding situation. And it becomes a ricochet effect of each person blaming the other without recognizing that the true cause of the problem was the fact that the check engine light came on and that original issue was never addressed. If you are new to my channel, my name is Grace and I am a divine feminine relationship coach, tarot reader, and energy healer. Today's video is all about how to handle triggering conversations, and I have 7 tips for you guys on how to navigate these challenging situations with greater ease, so stay tuned. Now, before we get into these 7 tips that I have for you guys, I would like to offer a small disclaimer. The tips that I am offering in this video are for relationships that are healthy and healing, right? We are talking about conscious relationships here. However, if you are in an abusive relationship or a potentially abusive situation, these tips may not apply to you because, like anything, they have the potential to be abused. And if you are in an abusive situation, please reach out for help. So let's dive right into this. I know this is going to be so helpful for you guys. The first tip that I have for you guys today is, as always, take a deep breath. So let's practice this all together now by inhaling deeply into the belly. You can choose to tap into this if you're not familiar with breath work by placing your hands on your belly and just feeling it gently rise and fall. So take a deep breath in and exhale. When we breathe mindfully and deeply, what is happening is that we are soothing the physiological response in our body when our body becomes in a heightened state of emotion due to the activation of our sympathetic nervous system that often comes along with triggering. This is the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn response. When we experience a triggering conversation, usually, as we mentioned earlier, the first thing to go is all conscious response, right? So now we are feeling very emotionally activated. Perhaps we're feeling a little bit emotionally overwhelmed, and conscious thought is the first thing to go in these situations. So when we are breathing mindfully, what we are doing is bringing awareness back into the body and allowing the body to kind of come back to its baseline so that we are no longer as emotionally heightened, and we have a better chance of responding in a conscious manner than reacting from that space of triggering. And as most of us know, triggering is a very natural response. It is an indicator light that shows us where we are still needing to do some healing, right? And usually this stems from trauma that we haven't yet healed. So there is a core wound there that is being triggered by a current situation. And a lot of the times that triggered reaction that comes up, that emotional reaction that happens, is disproportionate to the situation that's at hand. However, to the person that is experiencing the triggering, all the emotions are very real. The physiological bodily response is very real and it is valid. So how can we choose to address these situations? Now, if you are unpracticed in breath work, the first thing that I suggest is practicing this breath work in a space when you are not feeling triggered. That way, when the triggering situation does arise, you have a better chance of being able to utilize this useful tool because you have practiced it in a setting where you have felt safe and it was a neutral setting for you to be able to gain experience with this particular tool. So maybe adding breath work into your daily practice of self-care. Just taking deep, mindful breaths into the belly and bringing all the awareness to the body, the bodily sensations, and what you are feeling. Now, while we're in this triggering conversation and we're bringing awareness to the breath, we can ask ourselves what it is that we are feeling in the moment. What are the emotions that are arising for you during this situation? So when we take a moment to tune into how we are feeling, a lot of the times the first emotion that we will become aware of is anger. Anger is such a powerful emotion and a very helpful reminder because it shows us a lot of the times where our boundaries are being crossed, where we feel like we need to protect ourselves in some way. Anger is usually a secondary emotion, which means that there is an underlying emotion that is underneath the anger, that the anger is trying to help you to protect. A lot of times this underlying emotion can be this fear of rejection or abandonment, or just even feeling very hurt. When we allow our nervous systems to become regulated by this deep mindful breathing, then we can allow our nervous systems to begin to relax and come back to a state of homeostasis so that we can respond consciously rather than reacting from this wounded place. The second step that I have for you guys today is to create safety in the situation. If you guys want to learn more about how to create safety in a conversation or in a relationship situation, then check out my video, How to Create Safety When You Are Feeling Triggered. I'll link it somewhere up here. A lot of the times when triggering comes up, we begin to feel really unsafe in the situation. And like we talked about in the check engine light example that we shared previously, a lot of the times this becomes a ricochet effect, right? So we're feeling unsafe, the other person's feeling unsafe, and soon enough, nobody's feeling safe in this situation, which means that all reason is just gonna go out the window and no productive conversation is going to happen. So when we establish safety in the current situation, we can feel like we are more able to continue on the conversation in a mindful, caring, and compassionate manner. One way that we can do this is to establish that, hey, we are working together here to create a solution or to create deeper understanding if there's not necessarily a conflict at hand, but rather to gain deeper understanding of the other person and where they're coming from. So when we communicate this with the other person, to establish that we are on the same team here, we are not fighting against each other. Our goal is to create a deeper level of understanding. This will help everybody to feel more at ease and kind of get on the same page of what exactly we're trying to do in the conversation. And our goal, hopefully, is greater relationship harmony and intimacy and greater understanding of each other. The third tip that I have for you guys today is to recognize and accept that defensiveness will happen. Whether it's you or it's the other person in the conversation that is being triggered, defensiveness is going to be a natural response because when we are being triggered, it feels like we're being attacked, right? Even if the person in front of us is not necessarily attacking us or you're not attacking the other person, this is a normal response because our body is no longer engaged in the present moment. Instead, what we are reacting to might have been triggered by the present moment and the present situation that is at hand. However, our minds are stuck in our pain body, right? And this is all the accumulated trauma and hurt that we have acquired throughout the journey of our lives that we haven't released, that we haven't fully healed yet. And that is okay. And a lot of the times what happens when we are feeling defensive is our masculine side takes the forefront, right? And we bring up our masculine shield as a wall to kind of protect us from the perceived attack of another person. What we need to recognize is that this is an attempt to protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe. And I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, triggering conversations are not very fun. They can be very challenging to navigate, so defensiveness naturally is going to occur. And when we bring awareness of this into light, it is no longer hidden in the shadow. And because we have brought our awareness to this very naturally occurring response, we can begin to navigate it in a safer, more supportive manner. Which leads me to our fourth tip today, which is to lower your defense first. Now, this is much more easier said than done, right? Because who wants to be the unguarded, vulnerable one in the situation, right? Basically, what we are doing here is we are lowering that masculine shield and leaving our heart open for the other person to potentially wound us. And this can feel so scary in the moment. And it is such a courageous act for us to lower our defense and come to this other person and say, hey, I am open to you. I am open to this conversation. I want to reach resolution. I want to reach greater harmony and understanding between us because I care and this is important to me. It can feel a little bit scary and frightening to admit those things because we are giving this other person a chance to hurt us potentially. However, when we are the first ones to lower our defense, we are showing to this person that I'm not trying to hurt you. I am safe to be around. And we are inspiring them to do the same, to also lower their defenses. And this will take time and it will take practice. And it requires a show of vulnerability and a willingness to open your heart. When we lower our masculine shield and we are essentially giving this other person an opportunity to wound us, we are giving a display of trust. We are showing this person, hey, I trust you not to hurt me. And this will put them more at ease and more likely to also lower their defenses. And this leads us to our fifth tip today, which is to communicate from the heart space. So often when we're communicating from that triggered space, what we're doing is pointing the finger and blaming, right? You this, or you did that, and you did this, and this is terrible, and who wants to hear that? That is going to put anyone on the defensive, right? It doesn't feel good to receive. Even if you were the one that was triggered or they were the one that was triggered, we need to recognize that when we communicate from the heart space, it is more about how we feel. So really practicing using those I statements. I feel hurt when you don't listen to me. I feel rejected when you turn away from me when I'm trying to communicate to you. Whatever the situation is, really expressing how you feel in this situation and why it is that you feel that way. Of course, this step also requires being somewhat emotionally intelligent, and chances are, if you are watching this video, you are emotionally intelligent and you recognize when it is that you're being triggered. And hopefully the person that you are in these triggering conversations with is also emotionally intelligent enough to recognize how they are feeling and how to communicate how they are feeling. So when we are communicating from the heart space, we are making it less about what happened and who did what, but instead putting an emphasis on the emotions that are happening and our own personal emotional experience. And hopefully the other person will also be open to receiving this, and you can take turns with each other expressing yourselves emotionally and holding space for each other in a safe container. The sixth tip that I have for you guys today is to be curious about the other person and their emotional experience. And again, Again, like with the other tips, this requires some degree of emotional intelligence here. What we are doing is really putting ourselves into this other person's perspective. So this means leaving all of our baggage, all of our wounds, and all of our stuff at the door as we dive into this other person's human experience. When we do this, our focus is to understand how, with their life experiences, why this other person could be feeling the way that they're feeling and why it would make sense for them. Try to really step into this other person's shoes with empathy and compassion and understand their perspective of why they could be experiencing this situation the way that they are, based on their history and their life experiences that made them who they are today. Now, this does not mean that we justify or excuse any hurtful and potentially harmful behavior. And this also does not mean that you necessarily agree with them. It just means that you can understand why they feel the way that they do, based on who they are and their life experiences. Now, if this person has done something that is very hurtful to you or harmful for you to experience, this does not give them some kind of leeway, right? Because we don't want to justify their behavior. We don't want to give them an excuse for their behavior. And we certainly don't want to say that it is acceptable. What this does do, however, is to give you a greater sense of peace in understanding where they are coming from. We can still understand where people are coming from given their past experiences and their past woundings, and have compassion and kindness for them, and also hold them accountable to behaviors that are going to be healthy and beneficial for you both. When we can approach a challenging and potentially triggering situation with a sense of curiosity, it becomes less about who's right and who's wrong, because let's face it, there's really no objective right or wrong. And it becomes more about trying to understand this person and becoming more curious about, I wonder why this person is reacting the way that they are, or I wonder what exactly it is that is causing this defensiveness. I wonder what it was in this other person's past that made them feel so unsafe that now this is the only way they know how to relate to another person. It takes you outside of yourself and gives you a greater objective understanding of what is going on. So in this way, we are not becoming emotionally identified with our feelings. We are not allowing our feelings to become us and to kind of hijack our vehicle and allow trauma brain to run the show. Instead, we are allowing our consciousness to expand. We are allowing that curious mindset to take over, and for us to develop that loving and compassionate communication. And the seventh and final tip that I have for you guys today is, once you have reached some kind of resolution or harmony and gained a deeper level of understanding of the other person and kind of wrapped up this triggering conversation, right? You can do a reconnecting exercise of some kind to reestablish the bond that you have with this other person. Now, this exercise can be as simple as hugging it out, right? Anyone who knows me knows that I am a big advocate for hugs and hugging things out. Or this can be as simple as offering your gratitude for the things that this person said or did during this conversation that felt very supportive and nurturing of you. This can also be stating things that you guys love about each other, that you really admire and appreciate about the other person. Take turns offering each other compliments or support in whatever way feels good to you and feels like you are able to reconnect with each other and establish deeper levels of intimacy within the relationship container. And this can work no matter what kind of relationship it is, be it a family relationship, a platonic relationship, or a romantic partnership. It is so important for us to repair the relationship and connect even more deeply after we have had a really challenging conversation or conflict, and allow this other person to know, hey, you are still important to me, I love you very much, and I care about you, and your well-being is important to me. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope it was helpful for you. If it was, let me know in the comments section below what helps you during a triggering conversation, and let other people know what has been a useful tool for you to apply when you're in the midst of a heated conversation with someone. If this resonated with you, don't hesitate to hit that like button and smash that subscribe for more coaching content, daily tarot videos, and meditations. Have a beautiful rest of your day.